Tommy Dreamer told me that half the population listens to podcasts right now, so we should be good on this.
Half the population?
Well, I mean, if it came from Tommy Dreamer, it's got to be true.
It's got to be true. Did he read it on the internet?
It's got to be
true.
true.
Yeah, for sure. I got some great Tommy Dreamer stories.
Should we run the intro?
Hear our entrance music?
Yeah.
Standing behind the curtain, doing some squats, some push-ups, get some baby oil. Can you rub some of this baby oil on my back, bro?
Don't touch me.
Dummy! Yeah, you! Lower the mic!
And now, coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota, home to the Academy School of Professional Wrestling. This is Lower the Mic with your hosts, Michael Hunter and professional wrestling superstar and trainer
from Green Bay, Wisconsin, Mr. Anderson.
And welcome to the first of many, the inaugural episode of Lower the Mic. My name is Hunter, and standing next to me is my favorite asshole and yours, Ken.
Whoa,
No. Anderson, no.
Ken, we're just on a first name basis here.
Well,
we're buddies now, huh? We're buddies. You want to come over to my house and hang out? And
he's looking at me like I'm Tony Chimmel.
It's Mr.
Anderson. Do you have two last names? Is it hyphenated?
Yeah.
Can we hyphenate it? Or?
Sure.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Sure.
No, it's Anderson ...
This could be the first and last episode of Lower the Mic, so you're witnessing history regardless, folks. Ken, you are...
Mr.
Do I have to call you Mr. or just Anderson or Mr. Anderson?
From this point on, it's Mr.
Really?
Just Mr.
Really? You are a worldwide wrestling superstar. You still travel the globe. You're active. You're also co-owner and head trainer of the Academy School of Professional Wrestling, a fantastic facility, by the way, in Minneapolis. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with you 100%.
Ken, you are here for the podcast, correct? Yes, the podcast. The Lower the Mic, because lowering the mic is kind of your thing.
Kind of synonymous with Mr. Anderson.
Right.
Sort of.
Anderson.
Hey, man, it's the only thing I got. Okay, come on.
The only thing you got. All right, Ken, you're here for the insider perspective because you are a very intelligent person when you haven't had like 4 IPAs. Not just in wrestling.
I feel like you're suggesting that I...
No. I like it. I like a loose interview. It's great. I'm looking forward to our interview. To tell you the truth, we're setting the bar a little too high with our first guest. It might be all downhill from here. Mr. Eric Bischoff is our first guest on Lower the Mic. I'm kind of blown away by
Eric
this.
Bischoff's an awesome individual.
I'm excited to talk to him.
Yes, me too.
You have a long history with Bischoff, and we're going to get into some interesting things, I have a feeling. So I'm here to talk through my ass from a fan perspective and, probably tell a lot of fart jokes along the way. But I've been watching...
I'm 41 years old and farts are still funny.
They're still funny.
They are. I don't know.
I mean, that's how me and my 8-year-old bond. We both have an appreciation for fart jokes. It's a fantastic thing. I've been watching wrestling since the mid-'80s. I was a closet wrestling fan in high school when it wasn't cool anymore, but then the Monday Night Wars changed the game when I was in college. I've done time around the Midwest as a ref and a manager. Somewhere in the middle, I got mixed up in large market radio, and also did a show on Podcast One where we actually got to know each other. So that's my resume, and that was kind of funny how we crossed paths, because we've crossed paths in the past, many, many, many years ago when you were first starting out. And then last year, we crossed paths again, and I did a full show on you on my alternative sports show. And now here we are. We're starting this new venture together.
Here we are, and I'm excited. And, I have to say that interview that I did with you a year ago was, I do a lot of interviews, And a lot of times it's just the same questions, same stuff. Somebody looks at Wikipedia and they just ask you to just verify what they already sort of know.
Right.
And your interview was amazing. It was fun. So I'm looking forward to interviewing a lot of people in the wrestling business, a lot of my friends, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
This is going to be a lot of fun. And on this show, we are going to refer to our fans and listeners affectionately as assholes. Because Ken,
what's up, assholes?
Because Ken, that became a term of endearment for you in TNA, and one of my favorite segments was actually you and Bischoff going at it, and you calling him an asshole every other sentence. It was actually pretty funny. But the term of endearment, asshole, how did that originate?
I remember watching Raw years ago, and anytime Vince would do something, they would go, asshole. Asshole, and it was a pejorative. It was a negative, right? And,
right.
I remember thinking, like, what if I could get people to say asshole and have it be a positive thing? And I remember when I first got to WWE, I first sat down with Vince, and we were at the drawing table. I gave him that idea, and at the time they had just sort of gone to the PG era, and he said, "Oh, we can't do that, pal." And I remember being bummed out. And fast forward to WrestleMania 23 at Ford Field. I was going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. And I remember sitting down with Creative, and it was Michael Hayes. And he said, okay, after the match, we want to interview you, and we want you to have your Austin 316 moment. You know,
yeah,
famously,
no pressure
Austin
there.
316, you know, Austin had won the Royal Rumble? No, the King of the Ring. King of the Ring. He'd won King of the Ring, and came back and said, "Oh, I'll tell you that you keep talking your John 3:16 this and John 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass."
Yeah, he beat Jake the Snake.
Yep. And boom, that exploded, and next
rocket
day they had,
up his ass,
yep.
which you know a lot about.
I do.
Not things up your ass, but in a figurative
this is a
way.
family show.
In a figurative way, you know about the skyrocket up the mountain to the top.
And so I suggested that I hit this line. I had always had this like sort of catchphrase. It was "Nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole." Mm-hmm. And I remember I asked permission, and one of the first things that I'll tell people in my wrestling school is, it is better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
Right.
And I think that's just life in general.
It's the same thing in marriage.
And I asked, right. And I asked for permission. I was told no. And so now, like, I can't do it, right? No matter what. Even if it's successful, I'm in trouble. And so I went out there, and my promo was just sort of Mm-hmm. And then fast forward a couple years later, I was in TNA, and I hit that line, and the next night the fans started chanting, "We are assholes. We are assholes." And
how great is that?
Yeah, it was fun.
That's a good feeling.
Had the WWE machine been behind that, things we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
They were on their way to becoming a publicly traded company at that point. And so they're trying to clean up their act. And
right.
So
which I hated.
Right. Yeah. But they found their niche. They realized that they sell a lot of merchandise to
kids.
I
still sort of hate it to this day, but I understand where they're coming from. Obviously, it's successful, and we get into that later on. But
right. Yeah.
It works.
But that opens, if that's not your thing, that opens the doors to, things like TNA or Impact, whatever they're calling it now, and then Ring of Honor, New Japan. I mean, there's other places wrestling fans can go if they're tired of the comic book superhero wrestler.
Yep.
Eric Bischoff is going to be on the horn in a little bit. Full disclosure, this is being recorded the Saturday before the Royal Rumble, a week before the Super Bowl week. We're coming to you live from the Hunting Shack in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Man, I have had 3 IPAs so far. All right, these are good, though. Bauhaus. We're going to try to work out a deal with them. Look at Double A laughing over there.
I do like it. Double A?
Yeah.
She's laughing?
Yeah, she's laughing.
Mm-hmm. Double A Anastasia Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson. Oh, that's going to be Triple A.
Oh, AAA. Ooh.
Yeah.
Do we get a card for that?
Sure.
Okay.
Free toes.
We get free toes. Free jump starts? No? All right. This is going downhill quickly.
Hey, bro, I'm right here. Okay, I'm right here.
For the first episode, this is going downhill really quick. Hopefully we can change the mood of everything once we get Bischoff on. The Silver Fox. Did you see him on Raw?
He looked
25?
sexy.
He did look sexy.
Very sexy.
Very sexy. Super Bowl week is ahead of us, and we will actually be on 104.1 Jack FM out of Minneapolis on Friday, February 2nd. Friday before the Super Bowl.
What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. We're going to be talking with my buddies Remy and Weasel. Probably be talking football, maybe a little XFL. Speaking of XFL, we'll be talking about that during the show too. Maybe we'll bring that up with Bischoff, as well as Raw 25. And it's award season, so we'll bring up how much should our celebrities' opinions count in our political and social views. Is it a difference? I don't know. I'm sure Eazy-E has an opinion on that.
We'll ask a celebrity what his opinion on celebrity opinions are.
So Royal Rumble is tomorrow night. Now, anyone listening to this podcast already knows what happened. You are currently on the road to WrestleMania, so congratulations. We're happy for you.
Let me tell you something real quick.
Let me tell you something, brother.
Even when I was at WWE, I was there for 4 years. I always stayed away from creative. I tried to distance myself from finding out what was going to happen in the Royal Rumble because it's my favorite match of the year. It's super exciting. And you know, just to peel back the curtain a little bit, they would do that in the actual creative meetings too. Like there would be 30 people, and then as soon as the first 5 people had been eliminated, we would walk through what was going to happen. And when the first 5 people had been eliminated, they would say, "You 5, get the fuck out of the room." And then we would go from there. So like you didn't have any potential, you know, you cut down on the stooge factor.
Really?
Somebody that was going to potentially spill everything to the internet.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yep.
Do you have any predictions for the Rumble tomorrow night? Except for the Royal Rumble game we'll be playing, which will not be broadcast to anyone.
Or maybe it will.
Dude, we should totally do a live video on that.
We should. The thing that I want to say, and I really mean this, the thing that I am super excited about for tomorrow is the Women's Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I think that is, I believe that right now women's wrestling is fucking awesome.
It's good. It's not the Divas generation anymore. These girls can wrestle.
Yep. No. And you look at look throughout history, when women are empowered to do things, societies take off. It's just and I love the fact that women are being empowered in the WWE right now, in the wrestling world. You know, so kudos to them, and I really am looking forward to seeing that.
Let me go back on what I said about divas. I didn't mean divas couldn't wrestle. There were some divas that could tear to the house down.
Sure.
And were outstanding. Trish Stratus, Lita, just top of my head. But there were some of them, they were eye candy, and they were there, and they did, what they were supposed to do.
And that was a big part of women's wrestling back in the day. It was just women are, to look at, and that's it, which is the fucked up.
Yeah.
Now we know better.
Right. And these girls can work.
They really can, and it's fantastic. And Molly Holly, who was one of our trainers at the Academy, School of Professional Wrestling, was one of the ladies who could actually wrestle, who could work, and
she still
at the time, she is. She actually makes me feel like a bad person. Right? I think I'm a good person. I try to do good things for good people.
And then you go stand next to her, and you're like, I'm a
piece of shit. But she really she was during a time where they were hiring a lot of models and didn't have any wrestling experience or who even cared about wrestling. They didn't want to be wrestlers. They just thought, this is the way I can make money, and that's it. And she was the girl who would take those girls and figure out, how do I make them look good, and she did a fantastic job of it.
Absolutely. But before we get into Bischoff, Ken, that's a nice shirt you have there.
This is a nice shirt.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Yeah, I can read.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
I like whiskey.
You know what that means?
It means I like whiskey and I like dancing and I like dancing.
It means what the fuck.
Oh.
And this is actually a Grunt Style shirt. Grunt Style is a sponsor of the Academy School of Professional Wrestling and a sponsor of this podcast. And it is probably my favorite when it comes to T-shirts, whether that be just a workout shirt or a shirt to wear out in public and be a conversation starter. But what the fuck is Grunt Style? WTF, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, I'll tell you. Besides really cool apparel, they believe that what you wear is more important than just fucking clothing. It's about attitude and pride. And the gang at Grunt Style have taken the American fighting spirit and instilled it into everything they do. You do not have to be a veteran in order to enjoy or wear Grunt Style. What you have to do is you have to love freedom, bacon, and whiskey. Do you like those?
Check, check, and check.
Cool. And with nearly 200 U.S. veterans and patriots working together, Grunt Style's mission is to deliver the highest quality, most patriotic apparel on the planet and straight to your front door. I get a box every few weeks. Boom, dropped on my doorstep. It's like Christmas morning. Backed by their unbeatable lifetime guarantee, you'll always be blown away by their products, their service, and ability to America.
I like Merca.
That's a thing. Like, you can America.
I like Merkin.
I like... They are also the official shirt, as I've stated earlier, worn at the Academy School of Professional Wrestling. Head over to gruntstyle.com and use the word Anderson10 at checkout to save 10% on your purchase. What?
Ken, I'll let you introduce our first guest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is a man who's been extremely successful in the business, influential in the business in a lot of different ways. One of my wrestling dads, a mentor, one of my hunting buddies, my friend, and one of my favorites ever in the business, Eric Bischoff.
Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
And you were back, WWE RAW 25. You were back and better than ever. You look better than ever. What was that experience? What was that experience like?
It was great. I haven't been on WWE television now in, probably almost 10 years. I've done a few things with them. I was a part of WrestleMania last year, inducting, Diamond Dallas Page, and that was a great experience. I did a DVD series with them, a documentary, kind of about where I'm at right now in my life and all that. And that was cool. And I've done a couple things for the WWE Network here and there, but I haven't been on Raw in a long, long time. Like I said, almost 10 years. So getting back out there in that arena, in New York, Ken, you know what that's like. It's a different world. Sure.
Did you notice any notable differences between, just being in the locker room, the lay of the land?
I don't know that this was a really good environment for me to kind of try to discern any real differences because, as you can imagine, 25th year of Monday Night Raw, our 25th anniversary, it was just nuts. There was just tons of people like me that normally aren't there. They were broadcasting from two different locations, so there was just a lot of general chaos that normally wouldn't. When I say chaos, I just mean, just a lot going on. It wasn't that it was not managed well, but there was just so much going on. It was such an unusual situation that, sure, it was way different than what I was used to 10 years ago, but I think a lot of that just had to do with the fact that it was what it was, the 25th anniversary. One of the things that I did notice that was the same, and I talked a little bit about it in the pregame show that I was a part of, is, the passion for what they were doing. The energy was there, not only with the talent and with a lot of the backstage people that I've, become friends with over the last 10 or 15 years, but also with the crowd. It's just a different kind of energy, and that energy is the same, and the passion is the same. So there was a lot of similarities, but there were some differences too.
And they remembered you in that pregame show. They had the Bischoff chants going. That had to feel good.
Yeah, it did. It says a lot about wrestling fans in general. It doesn't say that much about me. Ted DiBiase got the same kind of big reaction too, and a lot of guys that the fans don't get to see on a regular basis. They're always going to give you that really great reaction because wrestling fans are loyal. They're loyal to the product. They're loyal to the company. They're loyal to the talent. You know, for the 29 and a half years of my career, people booed me and threw crap at me when they saw. But now that I haven't been on TV in a long time, they're cheering.
And they love you.
Well, they love me because they haven't seen me in a while. Believe me, if I showed up every week, that would change in a hurry.
What are your thoughts about the end result, the end product? Anything you would have done differently? Anything that particularly you liked?
With the Raw 25, the way it went off?
With the Raw 25? Oh, God, I hate to do it, because it's so easy.
Armchair quarterback. I'm asking you to be an armchair quarterback, but
I used to, verbally kick people in the balls every time that they would do that to the stuff I was producing.
I'm not asking you to bury anybody.
So, I guess with perfect 20/20 hindsight, which, by the way, if I had it, I'd be playing the stock market and hitting up every 7-Eleven in the country, buying up lottery tickets.
Definitely.
And doing podcasts on a Saturday afternoon. But since I don't have 20/20 hindsight, great. If I was just me, I think I would have probably integrated some of the legends a little bit more, because I think that's kind of really sort of what the 25th anniversary was really all about to the fans. They wanted to see things that they don't normally get to see every week. And I think, by the way, in defense of WWE, they had planned, from what I've read, I wasn't aware of it while it was happening there, but from what I've read, they had a lot more of that planned, but there were some creative changes that had to take place just because certain people weren't available.
Yeah, I heard there was a little bit of a scramble backstage and some rewrites going on up until and including
there was a
during
lot.
the show.
Yeah, there was a lot. Jimmy Kimmel was supposed to do some things with some of the legends, and there was supposed to be kind of a running thread throughout the show so that the legends would have had more of a kind of a meaningful role, I guess, is what I've heard and read. But, life happens, as we all know. That's the magic of live TV.
And I thought go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I thought the Jimmy Fallon thing kind of fell flat, too, with his whole in the front row listening to Elias, and there was really no purpose for it, I didn't think.
Oh, that's right. I said Jimmy Kimmel. I meant Jimmy Fallon. Thanks for the pickup there. I don't know that it did. Look, he's a big celebrity. He's in New York City, so
right. I mean, there was
Jimmy Fallon there. That's a big damn deal.
Right. I mean, it's a good get for sure. And there was a big build up the night before on Jimmy Fallon's talk show, but
yeah. And like I said, it was a scheduling issue. He originally, from what I understand, there was supposed to be a lot more of Jimmy Fallon's, engagement and involvement in the actual format, but something happened. It was out of everybody's control. That had to be axed, last minute, and as a result, I think a lot of the better plans that were probably laid out in advance didn't, never saw the light of day. But that's what happens. Live TV.
Right. So, Eric, can you tell us what do you have going on right now? What, any projects you've got going on? Anything in the works?
Oh, you know me, Ken, man. I've always got like 25 irons in the fire. There's one really massive project that I hate to have to do this, but I can't really talk about it. But sure. It's in a category of entertainment that I've never been involved in before, and I'm really excited about that, and hopefully be able to talk about it more soon. But it's kind of a life-changing opportunity for me in many respects. On the television side of things, I've been working on a project with a great group of people out of LA, a production company called Think Factory Media. Just a really, really smart, talented group of people. And we've been working on a project for one of the major cable outlets now for about a year. And it's in the kind of live action sports entertainment category. It's not professional wrestling, so I'll put a bullet in that rumor right now. It's not professional wrestling, but it is in the live action sports entertainment category, and I'm really excited about it. We're supposed to get some big news on that hopefully this week. So
cool.
I might be able to be more specific about that. Got a couple other television shows that are in the oven, at various stages of their cooking cycle, so to speak. But other than that, I'm just enjoying life here in Wyoming.
Do any of your projects involve soap operas? Because my grandma was convinced when I was a kid watching WCW that you were on one of her favorite soap operas.
No, they don't, and I'll tell you I'll tell you a little secret. I've never exposed this before anywhere. And if your grandmother is still alive, you can share this with her.
All right.
But one of my big goals when I first started getting a little bit of camera time was to either try to become a game show host, which I think a lot of people have heard before. That's not a secret. Or to try to step into the world of soap operas. And the reason for that is it's a very consistent line of work. If you look at a lot of those soap opera stars, they don't make the big money that, primetime, actors and actresses do.
They work
daytime
5 days a week.
Different, but it's 5 days a week, and they just keep your character. I mean, if you're halfway decent, you could do that crap for 25, 30 years. Man,
right.
That's a good gig.
And you can die 3 times doing it.
And you can come back. You can do all kinds of crazy shit, and everybody thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like working for the post office.
It's like wrestling.
It's almost like wrestling.
But you don't have to fall down.
Well, timing's everything. And let's, speaking of timing is everything, not just in life, but in the wrestling ring itself, depending on that era and where society is at a particular point in time. If it wasn't for WCW Nitro challenging Monday Night Raw on Mondays, I'm not sure we'd be talking about the 25th anniversary of Raw. And I definitely wouldn't be doing the show with Ken because the Attitude Era probably would have never happened because Stone Cold probably wouldn't have been an influence in Ken's life at that point.
It's an interesting observation, and obviously I appreciate you saying it because I happen to believe it for obvious reasons. But even I think if you sit down with anybody in WWE who's objective, and which, by the way, that's not an easy challenge either. Because people are, a lot of people in WWE that were there during the Monday Night Wars, especially when they were getting their asses kicked, they still harbor a little bit of, I don't want to call it resentment, but there's a raw spot there, no pun intended, when you start talking about this stuff with them. Not all of them, but some of them. But if you find, a couple people who are really objective about it, and one of them is, John Layfield. And I don't know if you guys caught it or not, but about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, they asked me to come on. One of JBL's first specials on the network was JBL, a legend interview kind of a show.
Yeah.
And I did that with John, and John opened up my interview, talking about what you just said. If it weren't for Nitro and Monday Night Wars and the NWO, this wouldn't have happened. That would have never happened. There would have never been a Stone Cold Steve Austin. There would have never been, live television every Monday night. There would have never been a Mr. McMahon. There likely would have never been the Attitude Era. There would have never been so many things. And I think arguably, and I'm taking it into the theoretical kind of area here, but I believe that the energy, the sheer volume of people that were watching wrestling because of the Monday Night War, I think a lot of that enabled WWE to go public. Totally. And I think that if none of that would have happened and WWE would have stayed that small kind of successful but niche kind of cable product and not gone public, I sincerely doubt that the company would even be here today. And I know that's a stretch, and that's, like I said, theoretical, but I don't think it's that big of a stretch.
No,
if you're objective about it.
I completely agree. I think competition makes everyone better. If it wasn't for the competition of WCW during the Monday Night Wars, the product with WWF at the time was so vanilla, and it was comic book characters, and it was colorful, and it was geared towards 8 to 15-year-olds, and I was definitely falling out of that demographic at the time. Ken, I know you were too.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it at the time, and it's. I'd like to say that wrestling today doesn't have that same. I don't want to. I guess I don't want to sit here and badmouth the industry, but I for some reason I don't feel that same nostalgia when I watch wrestling now. When I tuned in every Monday night, it was so exciting, and it was. There were only 2 shows on TV at the time when I first started watching wrestling. It was Monday night. You had to watch either WCW or WWE,
right.
WWF. And then for me, when you started adding all the other shows, I sort of started to fall off. Or I noticed that my friends people that I worked with started falling off because they just didn't have the time to invest.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. And, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on, Ken, that you just brought up. And I agree with you, on many of your points. But, one of the things I tell people, and again, I guess now because I'm quite a bit older and hopefully a little smarter, and I just have a different view of things now than I did even 5 or 10 years ago, quite honestly. But when I talk to people, and especially people, who came up through the Nitro, era, or the Attitude Era, the Monday Night War era, whatever you want to call it, and they'll come up to me in autograph sessions or Comic-Cons or whatever, and Ken, how this goes. Most of those people that come up, they stand in line, they want to meet you. They tend to say things to you that they think you want to hear because they want to have a relationship with you in a conversation, and I understand that. But, so when I hear people say, oh, wrestling's not as good as it used to be anymore, I just don't like it as much as I used to. And I remind people that a lot of that is because you've changed as a viewer.
Sure.
What stimulated you and excited you as a viewer when you were 12 or 15 or 18 or 24 or 25 is a lot different than it is when you're 45 or 50.
Sure.
Or in your case, Ken, 29. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? And the first time that you see things like, when during the Monday Night War era, you saw a lot of stuff in wrestling that no one had ever seen or done before.
Sure. But in the same sense, there are things that have stayed the same for me. Like, I like adult entertainment, and I'm not talking like salacious for the sake of salacious, but the family-friendly thing has never made sense to me. I get it from a business standpoint, but I don't understand it from a sense that you've got a show about guys that want to beat the snot out of each other.
Right.
How do you present that in a PG format without being kind of...
And look, that's not a creative choice. I'm pretty certain that's not a creative. I don't know any. I don't talk to Vince McMahon about this kind of stuff. I don't talk to him at all.
Sure.
And I'm sure Stephanie Hunter and everybody else who's involved in the process, they're catering to their business model.
Sure.
They're catering to advertisers, because if they don't, they won't be on television, and if they're not on television, they won't exist. So it's not like they prefer it. I don't think.
Right. Yeah. And it's not lost on me that it's not a success. It's obviously successful.
Right.
So, I'm wrong in that sense.
Right.
It's just I'm saying the things that I particularly like.
I think that's why Ring of Honor's working right now, is because WWE, it's a publicly traded company, and it's family friendly. And they sell a lot of merchandise to kids, a lot of it. But once you start growing out of that demographic, you veer towards other things like Ring of Honor.
Well, let's talk about that. And I'm a fan of Ring of Honor, by the way. Joe Koff is a great guy. I've had him on my podcast in the past. I can't wait to run into him, have a beer with him. So everything I'm about to say right now is not meant to be critical, but it's just let's be honest, okay, and keep things in context. Why is Ring of Honor? How do you judge whether Ring of Honor is successful or not? What's the barometer? Is it the revenue that they generate?
Sure.
Is it the ratings that they generate? Because we don't know what those are.
Yeah, that's hard to...
Is it the pay-per-view revenue that they generate? Because it's basically not there. What makes them, in your opinion, and I'm not criticizing you, Hunter, but what makes them, in your opinion, successful?
I think it's the buzz and the exposure, and then the talent pool that gets dipped into from organizations like WWE and everywhere else, that it's almost, I don't want to call it like a farm system, but a lot of their top talent will be recruited by WWE. But then WWE in turn will take that talent and put them in NXT and keep them there and tell them that we're going to hone, you're not there yet, and we're going to make you better, and then we'll bring you up to the big roster.
And that's a critique of the WWE process. But going back to how do we judge whether Ring of Honor or anybody else is successful? New Japan, or Ring of Honor. How do we judge? We can judge WWE because we see the ratings posted every week on every dirt site that there is. we can read in the Wall Street Journal what their quarterly reports are and how much money that they've made, year to date, against last year. So there's a lot of ways we can judge WWE. But, when it comes to Ring of Honor and New Japan and, smaller promotions, it's a lot harder to judge them.
Yeah, you're going off of YouTube hits and that kind of thing. And buzz.
But what does that mean? You can't make any money off of it.
Right.
So just because you give it away for free doesn't mean anybody cares about it.
Right.
It's like a cheap hooker. Who cares? It doesn't matter. My point is, though, guys, I've had way too much friggin' coffee today, so
we'll just let you roll.
You're in for it. I think we have to keep things in context. I think Ring of Honor, in my opinion, is successful because it serves a very specific purpose for the Sinclair Station Group, in that it's content that they own. They can sell it locally in their little local independent. And when I say little, they're one of the largest in the world in syndication television. But they can sell the commercial inventory at the local level in a way that makes sense for them. But they're not making money hand over fist. Their production values blow, and everybody knows it because they're not putting any dollars into the production because they don't have to. Their model doesn't require it. They're to your point, Hunter, they're successful because it's serving their particular purpose. And right. I'm really happy for them for that. But you can't really compare a Ring of Honor to a WWE or anybody else that has a different set of goals that they have to achieve.
I agree. And they have a lot of high-flying, cruiserweights and talented people, and you see stuff that you won't see usually on WWE programming unless you go to 205 Live, which brings me to my next topic is 205 Live versus the WCW Cruiserweight Division. Now, I was a big Cruiserweight fan back in the Nitro days, and it worked, and it breeded some fantastic talents. Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko. It was fun, and it was entertaining to watch every Monday night. And 205 Live seems to be falling a little flat with viewers. It was the 20th, I think I heard that it was like the 20th most watched thing on the network last week. What are they doing wrong with that product versus what WCW was doing with the Cruiserweight division?
Just about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, look, guys like Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Juventud Guerrera, Rey Mysterio, all the guys that came out of Mexico, all the great Japanese talent that we brought over from New Japan who were hot as hell at the time, Jushin Liger and a lot of others. They were all hot when they got there. Number one, they may not have been hot on the domestic United States television landscape because nobody had really given them, the kind of platform that I gave them. But all of them were extremely talented in their various territories around the world. What I did that was different, there we go, put an asterisk next to that word, right. Different, is I gave them, first of all, I didn't call it the junior heavyweight division because everybody else had done that previously. I called it the Cruiserweight division because immediately I wanted to be different than anything else that had been done before. I wanted the style of wrestling within the Cruiserweight division to be different than everything else that they saw, not only on Nitro, but anywhere else for that matter. I wanted it to be decidedly different than the style of wrestling that they saw in WWE. So the key to what I did, and one of the reasons I think people to this day, make the comparison, and it's an unfavorable comparison from the WWE's point of view, is because I made sure that the Cruiserweight division was decidedly as different than as it could be in every way, shape, or form. And it worked. It worked for me because on my format, forget about WWE and what they were doing. On my format, the action that you saw within that Cruiserweight division, if you think of it as a brand within a brand, was so unique that it made the show more interesting. If the style of wrestling would have been exactly the same, within a cruiserweight division as the style of wrestling that they would have been seeing in, the heavyweight division of WCW at the time, or Nitro, it would have never worked.
Right.
Because it just would have been smaller guys doing the same thing that bigger guys were doing.
Right, and you have a lot of those crossover moves now.
Who gives a shit?
Right.
Now what we're seeing on Next, and for 205 Live, I should say, and I've watched a little bit of it, especially when it first started, and I went, they're making the same mistake that I thought that they would make, which is they're not different than. They're doing the same thing,
right?
Basically, that they're doing on Monday Night Raw with a smaller budget and smaller guys, and expecting the audience to go, ooh, ah. Well, there is no ooh and ah if you're doing the same thing that they're seeing on Monday night and Tuesday night. The smaller guys.
The other thing, too, is that by the time that show comes on, especially in the live arena, those fans are worn out. I believe it goes on after Raw, right? So they've already seen 3 hours of Raw, and then, I don't know what their pre-show is now, but you're potentially looking at, they've already been sitting there for 4 hours. They are completely trashed.
You're talking to someone that had to live that nightmare, both as a producer and as a character and a performer, who had to get up there, and I never had to go past 3 hours. But, I've had to go on camera live, when the crowd was just exhausted, at 2 hours and 45 minutes, and try to make something happen and get a reaction. And you're right, Ken. It can be like pulling teeth, but it's a hell of a lot easier if you give them a reason to be excited.
Sure.
And when they're exhausted and you've got, fan fatigue has already set in, and then you go out and do the same stuff that they've already been watching for 3 hours with smaller guys.
Yeah.
Now you're going to ensure, your failure.
The popcorn run, or just getting up and leaving, or just
right.
Oh, well, but look, by that time, not to cut you off, Hunter, but by that time, if you're going out there and it's now 11:30 at night,
on a weeknight,
and and by the way, you've got to be to work at 7 a.m.
Let's bounce.
Yeah, and especially if you brought the kids to the arena that night, and they're just wrecked at that point, you're not going to stick around and watch 205 Live.
Yeah, they've been pounding popcorn and eating Milky Ways all day. They're going to go into a coma.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know what the answer is to 205 Live. It's really nothing different. So do they disband it? Do they incorporate it more into their Monday night and SmackDown product?
Let's do fantasy executive producer here for a moment. If it was me, I would, especially with the resources they have, I would think about a dedicated production, and it doesn't have to be large scale. And I'm not saying go into a soundstage a la TNA or even WCW Worldwide back when I, first did it, back in the 90s. That's such an artificial environment that it loses a lot of its charm as well. But I do think that you could go into a smaller, grittier environment because the audience is okay with that. There's so much independent wrestling, between New Japan and Ring of Honor, like we talked about. Look at Wrestle Circus and the success that they're having out of Austin, Texas. There's a lot of other really successful, indie promoters. You don't have to give them pyro and, $400,000 lighting packages and all that kind of crap. You can give them good, gritty, environment, but give them good action.
Right.
And I would give it its own dedicated show. I wouldn't piggyback it at the end of Raw. I would, lower the production values and the expectations. I would make it feel almost like Fight Club.
Sure.
And less like WWE Light. But more than anything, I would make sure that the action and the presentation is so unique and different.
Right.
And I would, and to complement that, or to make it really work, I would make sure that there was, that everybody on Raw knew that we had to protect the guys on 205 Live. Let's not have, 220-pound guys doing Hurricane Radas even though they can.
Right.
You've got to protect each other.
Absolutely. Now you brought up booking and stuff like that. What is your philosophy based on booking on a location? Okay, we got the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble is coming up tomorrow. Full disclosure, we're recording on Saturday, but it's in Philly. Now, can you put over a guy like Roman Reigns in Philly? Do you book based on location?
You're saying, are the fans in Philly going to accept it?
Right.
And do we care enough about just the fans on location?
Right, because you're serving every millions of people on the network, and if they hear someone get booed out of the arena for winning the match, I mean, that's going to carry over into the homes, and then every arena on their way to WrestleMania.
Yep, it's either a huge problem or it's a huge opportunity. I think that would be an exciting challenge as a guy that likes to try to figure out a way to co-opt the audience and leverage the audience. Mm-hmm. I would lock myself in a frickin' room for a week, and I wouldn't come out until I had 3 good plans on how I would take the fact that the Philadelphia audience just can't stand Roman Reigns, and I know that they're going to boo him, and they're going to want to do things even worse to him, and I would make that work for me. I don't know what it is, but I swear to God, I would come out of that room with 3 good ideas.
He'd come out of that room all disheveled, his hair's all messed up, and just cuts and scrapes all over his face.
Oh man, I'd look like Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lamb by the time I came out of there.
That's awesome. Big announcement this week: the XFL is back.
And the crowd goes wild!
Welcome to the XFL! All right, so it's a new era in the XFL.
Eric, before you go on, did you listen to the press conference? Did you watch the press conference by any way?
I watched part of it.
Uh-huh.
I was on a conference call, so I was able to kind of drop in and drop out depending on who was talking to me on the call.
How irritated was Vince by half of the callers? And do you recall that sort of, that feeling? Because I was sitting there looking at the way that he was responding to some of those calls thinking, I remember him talking to me like that. I remember.
But you could just see him grinding his teeth at some of the questions.
Are you stupid?
You
shit the bed.
I don't like to, I make an effort to really communicate that I don't know Vince really well at all. Mm-hmm. We're not friends. We never hung out. I never went out and had a dinner with him or a drink with him or anything like that. So I don't want to suggest that I have any deep insight into his personality. Then again, you don't really have to spend a lot of time with him to figure him out. He's pretty much
he's an open book.
He is what he is and who he is. And if you know him even a little bit, even as a kind of from a distance, in the environment, you just know that inside he wanted to tear some of those people apart. He wanted to blister them verbally and humiliate them and just reduce them to a puddle of muck.
And I felt
he couldn't do it.
Yeah, right. I felt like some of that was he wanted to do it before they even asked the question because he knew the interviewer and I hate this fucking guy.
Sports Illustrated, good damn it.
And it was hard for me to actually listen to the detail. First of all, I was on a conference call. I had to make sure somebody wasn't asking me a question, and I forgot to listen. So I was kind of like listening. In one ear, I'm listening to my conference call, and in the other ear, I'm listening to the press conference. But even under those conditions, it was hard for me to really pay attention to the questions because I was so entertained by watching Vince McMahon control himself
and just grind his teeth.
The questions were like background noise in a supermarket. Yeah. I didn't even really care.
Or the same questions too. Like 3 people asked the same question about what cities are you going to go to, and I just fucking answered that. You can just.
He would not make a good politician.
Pay attention, pal.
Yeah. And this coming from a guy, Bischoff, you actually challenged Vince to a legit fight back in the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. And
any chicken shit didn't show up.
And here's the funny thing. That was great for ratings, really for both camps, because in college we had side-by-side TVs and we'd have both of them on Monday nights. And we're just like, oh, is he going to show up? Oh, maybe Bischoff's just going to go over there, or maybe WWE is just going to bring a camera and go to WCW. And we were just glued to it. It was great.
Well, they had already done that. They invaded the North scope, which is why I ended up challenging Vince McMahon.
Right.
So they already did that.
What were your plans if they actually did show up?
Well,
to kick the shit out of them.
it's really funny because, I when Sean Waltman went on Monday Night Raw and, they shot that, shoot promo on me, and, we were kind of reeling a little bit by then. So I knew I had to do something. I couldn't do nothing. So I thought, okay, what's the most ridiculous, outlandish, get people talking kind of thing I could do? And I thought, well, screw it. Sean Waltman and DX, those guys are just puppets. They're employees. So them calling me out and, showing up when they know that nothing's going to happen, that's no big deal. I'll call Vince McMahon out because nobody would expect me to do that, especially Vince. So I went with it. And I didn't really talk to too many people. I didn't have to ask permission. I was the boss. I didn't have to get it, approved by anybody. I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I did it. And I didn't really tell a lot of people. I didn't tell Sting. I didn't tell, Hulk Hogan. I didn't tell Randy Savage. I didn't tell a lot of the people, that had, not that Sting had any experience with Vince, but a lot of the guys that were working for me at the time did. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger, you name it. There was a bunch of guys there that knew Vince pretty well. And I didn't. I had, I met Vince for, 60 seconds, 15 years earlier. I didn't know what he was like. So I thought, oh, he's just a big muscle-headed guy. He lifts weights, big deal. I've kicked the hell out of a lot of guys like that. I was a bouncer in downtown Chicago for a while. I fought a lot of guys that were way bigger than me that lifted a lot of weights. So I thought, what the hell? I'll do it. If he shows up, great. If he beats my ass, that's okay too. The ratings will be the buy rates will be phenomenal. So for me, I was in a win-win situation. If he showed up and I came out on top, which I really deep in my mind, because I didn't know Vince at the time. I didn't think he had that kind of street fighter instinct that he does. And he was half as, he's as nuts as he probably really is. I didn't know that. I just thought he was like a suit that lifted weights. But I thought, you know what? If he shows up and I come out on top, great. If he shows up and he beats my ass, great. If he doesn't show up, I win by default, great.
Right.
So to me, there was just no way it was going to lose. But I had Hulk Hogan came up to me after I shot the promo, and he's like, bro, you better be a little more careful because Vince doesn't take this kind of stuff lightly. I mean, you got to watch your back, Jack, I think is what he said to me. And I noticed all
we can all hear Hulk Hogan saying that too.
Nobody wanted to hang out at the bar with me after I did that. I was like, like all by myself.
Yeah, take them out too. Yeah.
See, speaking of all this reminds me of vaguely. I can't remember the exact story. I'm hoping you can tell it. The last time we were hanging out.
Yeah, we were drunk, brother.
My fiance, we were drinking.
I think we were in New Mexico, and there was this really just hot as hell 65, 70-year-old woman putting the moves on you, brother.
Who wanted you? Who wanted you? No, actually, the last time we hung out, we were drinking shots of tequila with my fiance.
Oh, that's right.
And I think you had said you hadn't had a shot of tequila in several years. You're not a hard liquor kind of guy, right?
No.
But there was a story many, many years ago. It was something where you got imprisoned for the night or something like that. Do you recall this story?
Oh, in Toma, Wisconsin.
Was that it?
Yeah, I got thrown. Oh, yeah, I was driving through Toma, Wisconsin. It was a long time ago, man. It was like I was a freshman in college, so it would have been like 1847 or something.
Can you tell that story here? Or
it was in 1973, and it was. I mean, if this is the story I was telling you, because there's a reason why I don't drink tequila often, and I don't recall getting into this, but I've only spent a couple nights in jail, and only two of them really stand out in my mind. One of them was the first one in Toma, Wisconsin. And I had some buddies that were hitchhiking to come and visit me in Minnesota from Pittsburgh, and they just got stuck in in Madison, Wisconsin. They couldn't get any further. They ran out of money. So I jumped in my 68. I jumped in my 68 Mustang, like at 2:00 in the morning, and I went blowing to Madison to pick them up. And I'm driving through Toma, and I'm speeding, and got pulled over. I was probably doing like 85 and a 70 or something, whatever it was back then. And he wrote me a ticket, and he said, well, you got to pay it. You got to go to the police department and pay it. because I was out of state, and I didn't have any cash. All I had was like checks. He said, well, then you get to spend $1 an hour in jail. So I spent a Saturday night in Toma jail, Toma, Wisconsin, with a jail full of drunk Native Americans. So that was fun. That was hilarious. The other time, and this is probably what you're referring to, Ken. Do we have a time limit?
No. And it was something. It had something to do with you taking an officer's gun or something like that. Anastasia just told me.
Well, no, that was a separate story. I didn't go to jail.
Jesus.
For that. I didn't go to jail. I did not go to jail for that. I'll touch on that in a minute.
I'm conflating.
That was one of the dumbest. Another reason why I don't drink hard alcohol.
But awesome stories, I think.
But the other one where I went to jail was in Chicago. And I had gone to Chicago to visit a friend. I used to live in Chicago, and I was a bouncer down on Russian Division, at Mother's and PS Chicago, and back in the early '80s when it was pretty hot back there and a lot of fun. But it was an interesting place to be a bouncer, or a doorman as they called them. And I was there, and I made good friends with still friends to this day. His name's Tom Krausman. He was a bartender, and I was a doorman. And we had grown up. We didn't know it, but we grew up, blocks away from each other in Detroit. And it's one of the reasons we became good friends. Anyway, fast forward, I leave Chicago. Lori and I have kids now, or Garrett had been born. I don't think Montana had been born yet. And I had to go to Chicago on business. So I went to visit my friend Tom and his wife because they had just found out that his wife, Laura, was pregnant, and they were excited. So I figured I'll go in a day early. I'll hang out with them. We'll drink a little wine, have a little fun. And Tom is to this day, a huge baseball freak. And he rented a flat or whatever, a duplex right near Wrigley Field. And he had a little deck, about 6 by 6, so he could sit out there and drink beer and literally look down and watch the game.
Nice.
That's how freak he was over baseball. So I got there, and I'll never forget, it was a Sunday night. I get in, we have a big spaghetti dinner. We're celebrating the fact that his wife's pregnant. And Tom goes, let's go out. It was like 10 o'clock now at night. He goes, let's go out. There's some baseball bars all around Wrigley Field where he lived that have a lot of history in them, like pictures on the wall from way back and just a lot of old, cool Chicago history. So about 10:30, we hit the streets, and we're going to go out. We're just going to have a couple, pops. We go out, and of course, it's, let me buy you a shot. Let me buy you a shot. So I have, 4, 5, 6 shots or whatever, a couple beers. And by the way, Tom is about 6'7". He probably weighed about 3 bills at the time, but he couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. The most gentle, kindest guy you'd ever meet, right? And then there's me, and at that time, I'm 5'10". I probably weighed about $180. So we look like frickin' frack as we're walking, from one bar to the next. Anyway, fast forward, this car pulls up, a little beat up looking piece of shit looking car pulls up right in the middle of an intersection. 3 guys jump out. First guy comes up right out of the driver's side. He comes out. He comes right at me, and I thought we were getting mugged. So I kicked him in the face. Back then I was still pretty active in martial arts, and I could still do some shit.
Now, were you in Taekwondo or?
Yeah, I was doing kickboxing.
Okay.
This was called MMA and all that. And
right.
I had fought on ESPN. I was a Golden Gloves boxer.
Oh, really?
It's not like I didn't know how to do shit.
Like
I
when?
This would have been mid to late 70s, early 80s.
So like the Superfoot era?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I fought in the PKA, Professional Karate Association.
Nice. Huh, I didn't know that.
Google that.
Yeah, I will.
GTS.
I kicked the cop in the mouth, dropped him. My friend, who was a bartender, he recognized them. He knew that they were undercover cops. I didn't. They didn't say, hey, we're police officers. They didn't pull out a badge. They weren't in a cop car. They were in an unmarked car that looked like it had been in a demolition derby, for God's sake. I thought I was getting mugged, so I knock out a cop. And now that I know, because I know the story. You beat up a cop or you hit a cop in Chicago or even threaten to, you get in for a bad night.
Done.
Yeah, that's bad.
So I threw my hands up and I immediately surrendered because I didn't want to get shot on the spot. And then it just got really horrible. I won't go into the graphic detail, but needless to say, I've been kneed in the balls about a dozen times while I was getting whacked with about a 4-foot long flashlight filled with D-cell batteries, and getting punched in the head by a guy who was grabbed his handcuffs. He had one handcuff in his fist and the other one was flopping around. And every time he hit me, he gave me 2 stitches. And I got hit a lot. So they take me to the hospital. Eventually, they take me to jail, or not to jail, to the police station to figure out what to do with me. They finally go, fuck, he's bleeding like crazy. So they take me to the hospital. Which, at that point, I knew I wasn't going to get, as they call it in Chicago, paddy wagon fever, where they find you the next morning in the river and call it a drug deal gone bad. Right. I'm telling you, I know the story in Chicago, or at least the way it used to be. So once I got to the hospital, I figured, okay, at least now I'm going to live because I know there's a record of me somewhere. And I got out of the hospital, and then I got thrown in jail with a transvestite. So my buddy came and got me about 8 o'clock the next morning.
How did you find out she was a transvestite?
It was pretty freaking obvious. What she said, hey, man, what are you in here for? It sounded like Ron Simmons. Or he.
But had beautiful, voluptuous breasts.
Big, tall, good-looking black beauty that sounded just like Ron Simmons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Damn, that's bad. You look like hell.
All right. Wow. We completely got derailed there. Let's talk XFL.
Damn.
All right.
All right, pal.
So,
that's a good question.
It's a new era of the XFL. When they were coming out the first time, it was right out of the Attitude Era. And they marketed it as the Extreme Football League. Which
I love how everybody, when they talk,
you got to do the McMahon.
Everybody does the voice, right?
Yeah,
you have to.
You can't not. So it's still branded as the XFL, even though now the emphasis is going to be on the quality of play, the emphasis on the game itself, and the players aren't allowed to grandstand on political or social issues, and it won't be tolerated. And he's gone on to say even as much as a previous DWI will disqualify you from being in the league. That really limits your recruiting.
No kidding, man. He's going to be recruiting from Jesuit schools all over the country.
Brigham Young University.
Even then, you'd probably have a hard time finding anybody. But
BYU is the only school that you're going to be able to...
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of a Jack Mormon? Jack Mormons are Mormons, and they believe what Mormons believe, but they do happen to drink coffee and have an occasional shot of tequila.
Oh, this is a real thing?
That's a thing.
That's a real thing.
I did not know that.
All right. Look at that. You learn things on this podcast.
Is Tim Tebow
Google
a Jack Morgan?
No, he's
Mormon?
just a jack off.
Google Jack Mormon.
That's great.
It's not a guy.
So, I mean, what's your initial thoughts on the XFL? Like, is it going to be able to make it this time around?
First of all, I'm no expert. In all seriousness, I'm having fun with you guys.
Yeah, no, it is fun having you on. Thanks.
And joking around. But in all seriousness, first of all, I don't know the sports business, the world of sports business. But as a fan, I guess, of football, NFL, and actually I'm not even really a fan of the NFL. I've kind of lost interest in it over the last several years. So obviously I'll probably watch 20 minutes of the Super Bowl, and I'll definitely check out the halftime show.
Right.
But to me, as a 62-year-old guy who grew up watching football, much like we talked about earlier on, the things that excited me about football when I was in my, teens and 20s and 30s and even 40s is different than what excites me now. Right. My tastes have changed, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. But if you look at the business of football right now, there's this oversaturation, in my opinion. You've got games on Monday night. You've got games on Thursday night. You've got college football on Saturdays, and you got games all day Sunday. You got 24 hours of football on DirecTV or Dish or whatever the hell it is you subscribe to, right? You've got preseason football games coming out of your ears. You've got so much football available to you as a fan that unless you're a die-hard just junkie, you kind of get a little tired of it, and you can't follow it at all. It's a little bit, Ken, like you said, once there became so many shows, you had WCW and you had, on WWE on Monday nights, and then we came out on Thursdays, and they came out with SmackDown, and now they've got, all this content out there. Yeah. It's like you just can't follow it all. You begin to distance yourself from the emotion of what those nights mean to you or what the brand means to you. Then for me, I'm just talking specifically for me now, I kind of started losing interest back when free agency became such a big thing and a big part of the business. Mm-hmm. And I understand how it creates kind of parity within the league and, no one team can dominate for any length of time. And I get that. However, when players that you affiliate or you associate with certain teams, Lyle Alzado was the Oakland Raiders.
Oh, man.
Period. End of conversation.
Yep.
If Lyle Alzado at the peak of his career would have been moving around the league, played 1 year in Dallas, and he played for New Orleans, and he went to Philadelphia, I wouldn't have given two shits.
No, and if you would have pulled the fans, they would have bought steroids for him. Yes.
You know what I'm saying though. Fran Tarkenton was the Minnesota Vikings.
He
played for the Giants, I believe, but people looked at him as the Minnesota Vikings.
Right, and Brett Favre was the Minnesota Vikings, right, Ken?
Wow.
Oh boy.
Eric, if memory serves me correctly, you are a Minnesota Vikings fan, correct?
No.
Oh, you're not? You're from here originally, no?
No, I'm from Minnesota. Well, I lived there. I'm from Detroit.
He had to stop here.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
I lived there for about 22 years.
Oh, really? What's your connection with Minnesota?
My dad moved us there when I was a kid. I was like 15 years old. We moved from Detroit to Pittsburgh to Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
So who's your football team?
Steelers. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Gotcha.
But my point, to close it up, is when free agency kind of started becoming a big thing, and players started moving all over the place and moving all over the chessboard, and then they started moving teams around the chessboard.
Yeah.
It's like, you're never going to, other than this conversation, you will never hear me say Las Vegas Raiders. Ain't going to happen. They're going to be the Oakland Raiders till the day I freaking die.
Yeah. They were the LA Raiders, the Oakland Raiders, the LA Raiders. What are they now? Are they back in Oakland again? They're back in Oakland.
They're in Las Vegas.
But no, they're not in Las Vegas yet. That's like
they will be
a year or two away.
Still.
But their coach is going to be Chucky. I'm excited about that. So yeah, Eric, you're in the minority.
To your point, like it's interesting that we're such diehard fans for one particular team, but none of those people were, none of the Packers went to Wisconsin schools. They're not from Wisconsin, and the people that we cheer for today are going to be gone next year.
Right. It's just the team.
Yeah.
Well, and to
just cheering for the name.
Yeah.
And to try to answer your question about the XFL, I think what Vince is doing, and I'm sure the people who will invest with him, he's put $100 million of his own money into the kitty.
That's amazing.
I'm sure there's going to be some other people that are going to want to ante up with him. I think what they see is the fact that between free agency, the oversaturation of the product, what's happened to the rules in the game because they've had to modify it so much for television, and now you've got the political kind of shitstorm that we've lived through the last year.
Yeah,
I think people are looking at a niche audience that are going to look for a different kind of football.
Oh, I agree.
It's a different world. Back in 2000 or whenever it was when they tried this before, you didn't have streaming. You didn't have digital platforms. You didn't have over-the-top television platforms. Well, Vince has one of the biggest ones in the world right now. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to make this go-round of XFL much different and a much more interesting opportunity than the previous one.
Well, here's the thought, too. The XFL, even though it isn't considered competition to the NFL, it will make the NFL better because the NFL took some of the best parts of the XFL and made their product better. And I think the XFL is going to push the NFL to be better. And I think Vince McMahon is going to be, damn it, if you won't clean your league up, I'm gonna. And so he's sticking $100 million of his own money into it, saying that we're not going to put up with social or political agendas or grandstanding or anything like that. We're going to keep it to football. We're going to keep your attention span at 2 hours, and we're going to make it a family environment. Because when was the last time a family of four brought their kids to, kids under the age of 10 to a football game. I wouldn't.
Well, hell, you'd have to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to be able to afford to do it.
There's that, yeah.
Yeah, if you're making like $64,000 a year working in a food processing plant,
right,
outside of Minneapolis, guess what? You're not taking your family of 4 to a Minnesota Vikings game unless you're willing to skip your mortgage payment next month.
Right, yeah, unless you call into a radio station and win tickets.
But so the XFL, it's going to be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with the TV deal. Whether, because he says it's separate from the WWE, but you almost have to package it in. Is he going to package it in with the new TV deal with WWE, or is he just going to go straight to Amazon or Netflix or even WWE Network?
I don't know. Obviously, I couldn't even begin to guess. My only observation would be that WWE is a publicly held company.
Yeah.
And that creates some, I don't want to say restrictions or limitations, but challenges. Vince McMahon is, the majority shareholder. The McMahon family is in conglomerate is. So that, enables them to, do a lot of things that other publicly held companies can't do. But still, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to do what's best for them and what's right for them. And you got to be a little bit careful and aware of what kind of moves you make. And I honestly think that they will be able to make a separate TV deal that's totally distinct and not attached to WWE. I do believe that that's possible.
Well, I hope so. I hope for a new innovative product. I wish them the best of luck and everything, but we're 2 years away, and the NFL has that opportunity to steal any bright ideas they may have in the interim in the process to kind of.
Are you kidding me? Have you been watching?
Oh, I've been watching it, but they've also lost 20% of their viewership this year, so they know something needs to happen in the next couple of years.
Therein lies a dichotomy of the situation.
Right.
They've lost 20% of their viewers because they've got no decent management. The commissioner's a freaking idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Off the football talk. Let's get back to wrestling. I want to talk TNA in the open checkbook there.
God,
there it is.
There,
look at the time. Gotta go.
He thought he was almost out the door.
Wait a minute. I've got a toothache. I gotta go pull it. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's go ahead, Ken.
Let me go down this path here. So, one of the, as I stated in the open, you're one of my favorite people that I've ever worked with in the business. And part of the reason was when I got to TNA, I was very frustrated. I was in kind of a bad place. I wasn't happy with the way that things went in WWE to a degree. And when I got there, you said, Ken, I realized that you were sort of, you had that thumb on you to a degree. And you were told exactly what to say and what to do. And you removed that, that giant weight, that monkey off my back, and said, when we hand you a script, you can just sort of, we want to get to this point, but you can get there in your own particular way. And, I was very grateful for that.
You're not going to cry, are you?
No. Okay. Not yet.
But I am. Damn. I miss those days, Ken. We had it all.
We did. One of my favorite things that we did was Aces and Eights, and that's one of the highlights of my career. Could you speak to that a little bit? What was your thought process coming up with the idea? I know it was your baby, how it was handled, what you would have done differently, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm going to criticize. I'll be self-critical here just for a moment, and admit and acknowledge that, the faction formula is something that clearly worked for me in the past. It worked for WWE, and it worked for WCW back when the Four Horsemen were the hottest thing in wrestling.
I love the Horsemen.
I always believed that faction kind of formula, whether it was the NWO, DX, the Four Horsemen, whatever, it's something the audience almost subconsciously understand. it's the reason that West Side Story is being remade by Steven Spielberg. That gang, that cultural, that is just something that I think is innate in us as humans, and it's part of our culture. It's something that we can build on pretty easily, number one. Number two, the reason I like the Aces and Eights idea as a part of a faction formula is because, quite frankly, Sons of Anarchy was the hottest thing, one of the hottest things on television at that time.
Yep.
And the biker culture, it's been around since Easy Rider, Peter Fonda, and so on. I mean, it's been around forever. 1 million people show up in Sturgis still to this day after 77 years. It's part of American culture.
Some people do wrestling shows there.
Yeah, some idiots do it. But I just kind of, my gut told me that, I wanted to do a faction formula, but I wanted it to be different. And just seeing what was going on in pop culture and in television and media, it just felt like Aces. Plus, it's something that I kind of know. It's just, I'm not saying I'm not a biker. I'm not a hardcore biker. I'm certainly not a club member, but I know a lot of people that are, and I spent enough time around it to have a sense of it, and that's kind of where it came from.
Where did the Aces and Eights name come from?
It's actually because I'm a huge fan of Western history, Western American history, and kind of cowboy culture. And Aces and Eights is a dead man's hand. That if you read about Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and all that, that's where that came from. So it just kind of popped into my head immediately.
Cool.
Anything that you would have done differently?
No.
Being an armchair quarterback, having perfect 2020.
Put you over less?
No,
me.
I honestly,
you put me over less.
I honestly think that formula, the creative, the talent involved in it, I think it was cast perfectly. There was nobody in Aces and Eights that shouldn't have been there, in my opinion. I think the story and everything that we did, particularly, and I'm not being a smartass here. I'm not trying to denigrate anybody or anything, but the fact that we pulled off that storyline in TNA where they had zero resources, there was just, it was, you talk about making chicken salad out of chicken shit. We made filet mignon out of that, and I think it was done perfectly, to be honest with you. And that's not just on me. That was me. That was all of you guys in it, because you all contributed. Yeah. Bully was great. Ken, you were great. That was a pretty collaborative thing where we'd show up to do something. I had a pretty good idea what I wanted to do, but we talked through it. We all collaborated, and we pulled off magic, in my opinion.
Speaking of frustrations within TNA, that's, to me, that's a great point and a great thing to talk about, because at times you would assume that because of the way that things were going behind the scenes, like guys would complain that they hadn't been paid in 3 months, and we would I remember going into a town in, I believe it was Baltimore. We worked a baseball stadium, and there were 62 people in attendance. Wow. Ring of Honor incidentally ran a show that night, and it was whatever arena they were in, they sold it out.
I had 78 people at my house in Wyoming for a barbecue that same weekend.
And there were times where it was just like, it seems as though the locker room, the morale should just be in the gutter, but it never was. That was the crazy thing. We were always upbeat. We always wanted to go out there and kick ass and have fun and put on the best possible show. And we just kept thinking, and actually I remember having this conversation with you, because they came to me at one point and offered me they wanted me to take a haircut, so to speak. And you said, I don't know if you remember this conversation, but you believed in the company. You believed that, hey, if we all pull together and pull our weight, we'll be able to right this ship and pull it out of the gutter. Can you speak to any of that stuff?
Yeah, and there was a moment where I did feel that way. I didn't have, despite the narrative that's out there and what people think and say and write about and read, I had absolutely zero control in TNA. I couldn't hire anybody. I couldn't fire anybody. I didn't get consulted on any of the financial decisions or any other freaking thing that they did when it came to the business of the TNA business, right? I did influence creative towards the end, more so than in the beginning. That I did do. But the business side of it was completely out of my hands. However, I did have pretty great relationships with Spike TV and certain executives at Viacom at that time. And at the time you're talking about, Ken, I was talking to them almost off the record. It was nothing, I didn't violate any confidentiality things, but we were having kind of, I'll call them sidebar conversations about the possibility, at least, of Viacom investing in TNA and becoming a partner in TNA much the same way as they did with Bellator. And it was my opinion at that time you and I were talking, Ken, that was a viable possibility. And if that were to happen, then I really did believe that TNA could have survived and probably prospered and been a much different company today. Well, clearly it would have been a different company today than it is now.
Yeah.
And that was at that time. But that opportunity, like so many other great opportunities that were there in TNA at the time, got completely inverted and ruined and went by the wayside.
Interesting.
Crazy time. But
yeah, good times. There's some good stuff out there. If people haven't seen it, they need to go on YouTube and check it out. Let's get, I want to get out of the world of wrestling just for a second because I know you have an opinion on this. And that is, it's award season. Therefore, celebrities have an opinion on everything. And yes, they're in our faces every day. They're talking to us and telling us how we should behave in real life. But do we really need the winners of an award to tell us how to live our life? And should we actually listen to them?
You should if you choose to. I choose not to.
Right.
Look, I mean, I make my living in Hollywood. I know the culture, and I guess to a really, really minimal degree, I'm part of it in a way. I'm certainly, never going to be on anybody's red carpet, and I'm certainly never going to get an award and stand up and tell people how they should vote or what they should think or anything like that. But being honest about it, these people are, just most of them don't have a freaking clue what they're talking about. They don't read.
No.
They memorize bumper stickers,
right.
And they repeat a lot of what they hear within their own little bubble, in Hollywood, and it's part of the culture. It's a very dangerous place. Hollywood is a very dangerous place for anybody that doesn't, think like the masses do in Hollywood. But I think, after just go back and look at Harvey Weinstein, Harvey and all of his friends and, Oprah Winfrey, and all the people that embraced, Meryl Streep and Barbara Streisand and all these, these talking heads in Hollywood who talk down to anybody that doesn't think exactly like them. They were all, swap and spit with this guy, and embracing him and propping him up and them. Harvey Weinstein was, a big part of, Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party and helped raise money and throw parties in LA and all that kind of crap. And now anybody that chooses to listen to them and put any kind of real value in their opinion, does so at your own intellectual risk. I mean, you can sit around and read comic books and believe that superheroes are real too if you want. It's your choice.
Speaking of Oprah Winfrey, how excited are you about the potential of a president?
Oh no, she came out and said she's not. Really? She's not running. Yeah.
What about The Rock?
Oh, he is a celebrity.
Let's talk about Oprah Winfrey. Now, I'm going to surprise you here, Ken. I don't think it's a bad idea, and I would not be unhappy to see that, and not because I want to see Donald Trump, beat her ass or anything like that. Look, she's an incredibly intelligent, articulate individual who can motivate a lot of people. I think that's
key. Yes.
It is key. Look at Ronald Reagan. Wasn't, he didn't go into the office knowing all of the answers and having all the solutions, but he was a leader that everybody could wrap themselves around and believe in, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican, whether you were liberal or you were conservative. Ronald Reagan was a true leader based on his ability to kind of put his own personal shit off to the side and do what was best for everybody. I don't know Oprah Winfrey, but I believe, listening to her, although I may not agree with her on a lot of things,
Sure.
I think that she has that, at least the potential to be a much better leader in that regard than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump, as much as I love his policies, by the way, I am a huge fan of the tax policy. I'm a huge fan of what's happening to the economy. I'm a firm believer that he's right on immigration. I don't think there's hardly anything from a policy perspective that Trump is advocating that I don't agree with right now. And I'm not, totally familiar with all of it. But the high spots, I'm in. But I wish the guy would never open his mouth again.
Yeah. Or they cut his thumbs off.
Yeah, I think we can all agree he should be blocked on Twitter. Yes.
I mean, when I see him on television, I just want to chew my leg off. I'm like a dog caught in a fucking coyote trap. Just like, get me out of this room. Get me away from this television.
Yeah.
He's horrible.
He steps on his dick a lot.
A lot.
He's not a leader in that regard. He's not rallying people around him the way Reagan did. He's accomplishing amazing things, and I bend over backwards saluting him for that. But I think we need more than that. We need a leader.
I think Oprah's speech when she won that award was really good booking based on venue. That's a good example of it because she played to the crowd in attendance. They popped, and everyone at home in turn went, "Oh yeah, yeah."
Right.
Well, I mean, you'll see. I mean, that's the ultimate heel and babyface, right? Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey. You could not book a better heel babyface combination than that. However, and here's the other side of it, right? If Oprah Winfrey is another Barack Obama, who, by the way, I think is one of the most gifted speakers we've had in politics since Ronald Reagan. Yeah. All right, I'd still put Reagan ahead of him, but man, it's close.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is Barack Obama was just, in my opinion, he'll go down as one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States. He could talk his ass off, but man, he was horrible when it came to being an actual president.
He's a great speaker.
And I don't like I sort of like the idea of having a celebrity as a president. I don't have a problem with it just because they're a celebrity. And
because people
in a large sense, the president is a figurehead. They don't, they hire people, they delegate to other people, they defer to other people.
They're the face of the country.
Right, exactly.
To a degree, but Barack Obama did a lot of damage with executive orders. Donald Trump is undoing a lot of damage with executive orders, and that's a personal kind of just mano-on-mano kind of a deal. That's not, granted, I'm sure he's, Trump, to your point, Ken, Trump's got a lot of advice. He's probably got great economists telling him, what he should, what regulations he should unwind.
I don't know that he thinks
he don't.
I don't know that he listens to anybody else.
Well, yeah, he may hire the best people available, but he doesn't listen to them.
There was a couple situations when they were asking Vince the questions about the XFL where he answered exactly like Donald
Just
Trump.
like Trump,
I'm going to hire the best people. Well, Eric, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your time.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome. We could talk for hours, and hopefully we'll be able to soon again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, man.
Saturdays are good for me. Once the weather starts getting nice and I get out on my horse and play with my dog, then I'm a little hard to hit. But man, when it's cold as ass out here in Wyoming in the wintertime, you can get me on the phone anytime, brother.
That's fun, man.
Well, can you tell our listeners where they can get a hold of you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, there's really only one place. My Facebook is kind of blocked just for family and friends. But if you want to hear my ridiculous shit or read it on Twitter, you can find me at Bischoff. And by the way, guys, can I just throw this out there?
Do it.
I'm having a blast with this, right? Yesterday morning, I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before. I'm going through my Twitter feed, and some guy posts a picture of this dude who had like 25 or 30 different plastic surgeries to look like a Ken doll.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And ironically, he's wearing a black shirt. He's got gray hair that's pushed back, and he's got real high cheekbones. He's freaky as hell looking.
Okay.
Right? And the guy who's a wrestling fan says, "Oh, this guy, had surgery so he could look like an anime Eric Bischoff." And I'm having a cup of coffee, and I'm looking at this, and I spit coffee all over myself because it looked enough like me as an anime that I went, "Oh my God!" And evidently this dude had like 4 or 5 ribs removed and all kinds of like crazy shit, right?
You've had ribs removed?
So yeah, he had the picture is of him. I guarantee you, go to my Twitter right now and look at it.
All right.
It's a picture of this freaky looking dude that kind of looks like an anime Eric Bischoff holding a jar full of formaldehyde with his ribs in it. I kid you not.
Oh my God! Why did he have his ribs removed? I remember there
was
being a
taking
rumor
picture.
that
it was like
Marilyn
like
Manson back in the day.
He wanted to give himself a svelte little waist, which clearly had nothing to do with me. He didn't notice the fact that my 6-pack gave way to a keg a long time ago. But anyway, here's the point. So I see this picture. See, I can see you, Ken. You don't know that. I can see you right now looking on your Twitter feed. You're trying to find this.
I am.
So I retweeted. I looked at it and I tweeted it. I said, "What the hell?" Right? When I came up here to do this podcast with you, I had 5,125,000 impressions.
Wow.
It's like off. Did you find it yet?
When did you tweet this? Yesterday?
Just go to my Twitter page and just scroll down.
Oh,
you look pretty.
Wow.
I shit you not.
That's something
amazing.
Isn't that bizarre?
Wow.
And look at the number of likes and the number of retweets I got on that someday.
81.3K likes and 30.6 thousand retweets.
Wow, I won't be able to sleep tonight, but that's cool.
That's as many. I looked at it this morning. I figured, well, I'm going to compare that to Donald Trump because he's got like 47 million followers. I beat him like 7 out of 8 tweets.
Yeah.
Maybe I should run for president.
That's
Come
right.
on, Oprah.
Take that, leader of the free world.
I love it. Well, Eric.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Appreciate it.
All right. Be well.
All right, let's take it home. Ken, give me your 3 count. 3 things you want everyone to take away from this inaugural episode of Lower the Mic.
It's funny you say that. Just 3 things.
3.
It reminds me of a story that Paul Heyman once told me. He said that Steve Austin had been working with Brian Gewirtz, who was the head writer of Raw at the time. He now works for Rock in his $5, $7 promotions.
Oh, cool.
And they'd been working all day on a script and what he was going to say when he was on Raw. And went over it again and again and again. And Austin wasn't happy with it. And finally, when they were in gorilla position, which is right behind the curtain, for those that don't know, literally a minute before they were going to hit the glass, they were going to come back from a commercial break, hit the glass, and Austin was going to go out to the ring. And he goes, "Vince, you going to make me go out there and read this happy horse shit? Or are you going to let Paul Heyman write some good shit for me or give me a good topic?" And there was that silence, and like, what the fuck? 45 seconds, 30 seconds, and Paul Heyman said, Vince, what are you going to do? And Vince just takes the headphones off, and he goes, "Paul, go ahead." He goes, "God damn it, Paul, give me 3 topics." He goes, "Water, women, and wine." And hit the glass. He heads to the ring and cut a promo for like 10 to 15 minutes on water, women, and wine, and somehow wrapped it all up at the end and applied it to whatever the storyline was at the time.
How brilliant is that?
Great. But the 3 takeaways from this episode.
Yes.
1, do not, I repeat, do not super kick a police officer in the face.
I think you're going to only hear that story on Patreon. Yeah.
Well, okay, then number 2 would be if you tell a Vince McMahon story, you have to, and I mean have to, pal, do the Vince McMahon voice.
You gotta reach down low, damn it.
Damn it. God damn it. Are you stupid? Are you an idiot?
That's rhetorical.
You shit the bed. And do not consume more than 3 IPAs before you do an interview.
That's good advice.
It is good
You should
advice.
take that
But
next time.
it sure was fun.
It was fun. You know what? Going back to that Paul Heyman story, you were a Paul Heyman guy.
I was.
You were. We'll get into that in a future episode. Now it's time to go collect. Thanks to our guest, Eric Bischoff, for putting us over. Music provided by Throw the Fight. Check them out on Spotify and iTunes. Grunt Style Clothing And a big thank you to you for listening. You guys make it happen. Tell your friends. Don't forget to head over to patreon.com/lowerthemic. Sign up for exclusive content, rewards, and uncensored episodes. And follow us on all your favorite social media platforms. We're on the Twitter, Lower the Mic, Facebook, Lower the Mic, and Instagram, Lower the Mic. And
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
That's continuity.
I like it. I like
yeah,
it.
and you are on the social media platforms as well.
I am. I'm on Facebook, and I recently made my Facebook profile public, and I am on the Twitter.
The Twitter
At Mr. MR Ken Anderson, KENANDERSON. And I am also on the IG, the Instagram, and that is Mr. spelled out MISTER KENANDERSON.
Look at that. You're even hip with
Boom.
the younger generation
And
saying the IG. Look at that. I have to say
IG.
Instagram. And I am Hunter, and I am voice of Hunter at Twitter and the IG. And that's all I'm on. I might be on the Snapchat someday. I don't know if I'm cool enough to do that yet. But we'll figure it out as we go. Until next time, Ken? Cool.
Mic drop.
Wait for it. Wait for it.